Uh,
Yes, yes.
Hello.
Hello, hello. I can hear you.
Do you listen to me?
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Good
Okay.
evening, good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you, can we get your visual image?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
I am audible, right?
Yes, definitely. You're audible. Absolutely. The only thing is that I am not getting your visual image.
What? I don't follow.
Actually, the image I am not getting. It's,
Image.
yes.
Now you get it?
Yeah, definitely. I'm getting. I'm getting. It's all
Okay.
right. Now it's almost all right. Okay, Shinamse, please go out with the formal program. Please.
All right, Glitty, you may
Yeah.
start now.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. In the midst of chaos, there is an opportunity, says Sun Tzu in his famous book, The Art of War. Not trying to oversimplify the ongoing crisis, but let's get real and make use of the best that's available for us. As the novel pandemic COVID-19 outbreak is taking its toll on millions of people around the world, I thank God Almighty for keeping us safe and also for helping us to conduct this webinar on behalf of the Department of English under the leadership of Reverend Father Joshi Chiramkuri CMI, the principal of KCMT, and Mr. Sijo Joseph Chinnayan, the head of the English department. I, Glitty C,
And Teresa Thomas.
of third year BA English, together welcome you all to the webinar on Shakespearean criticism. Before we begin, let's take a moment of silence.
I request the participants to take note of a few guidelines for the smooth conduct of the webinar. I request the participants to mute the audio to avoid any kind of disturbances. I also request the participants to not post anything in the chat box unless you have a question to raise. All the questions that are intended for the Q&A session are to be posted in the chat box. A feedback form will be posted in the chat box at the end of the webinar, where an e-certificate will be mailed to you upon its completion.
Now, I invite Ms. Aishwarya Biju of first year BA English for the welcome speech. Over to you, Aishwarya.
Good evening to the honorable dignitaries
Good evening.
and distinguished participants present here this evening. I am truly esteemed to welcome all of you who are the integral part of this webinar. Firstly, our dear principal, Reverend Father Joshi Chiramkuri CMI, who, with his excellent managerial skills, is rightly the pillar of this institution. We appreciate his support and his help towards the conduct of today's webinar. Unfortunately, he could not join us today. Honorable Dr. Basudev Chakrabarti, former Professor of English and Faculty Dean, University of Kalyani, West Bengal, is our resource person for this beautiful evening. Today's webinar on the topic Shakespearean criticism will throw light on analysis of the various aspects of Shakespearean works. Our HOD will enlighten us further of Dr. Basudev Chakrabarti sir's excellence in academics and his contributions to the literary arena. We are truly grateful to have him today. I welcome you, sir, to this webinar and wish you all the very best. Mr. Sijo Joseph Chinnayan, head of the Department of English, is an individual who hardly needs an introduction. He delights us with his expertise and knowledge in every way possible. I welcome you, sir, to this webinar. And our sincere appreciation to Ms. Sheena Susan Baby and Mr. Neville Thomas, who generously helped us in making this event become a reality. I would like to welcome Dr. Shubha Narayan, University College Trivandrum, along with all the KCMT English Department students and the ones joining in now, hoping that each and every one of you will gain an insight from this session. I welcome you all once again, and I hope you will have a fruitful session along with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Mr. Sijo Joseph Chennelil, the hair and heart of our English department, whose faith and motivation always helps us to do better. Now I invite Sijo sir to introduce our speaker.
Respected Principal Father Joshi Chirangar CMI. He is not here. He does have a certain busy. He does have a busy schedule. He does have certain things to do. So that's why he may not be able to attend this webinar. But he is the mainstay of the English department. Whatever initiatives that we produce out of the English department, those initiatives do come from his bosom. Also, respected Sheena Miss and Nabil sir, and also all other teachers of the English department, especially in Jeremy Miss is here, and I have seen certain other English teachers. Definitely, I like all of your presence, especially in this webinar. The task assigned to me today is to introduce the resource person of this webinar, Dr. Basdev Chakravarti. See, in literary circles, he does not need any introduction because he is well known. He is a well-known figure in India and abroad. But to you, he may be an unfamiliar person. So I will just go through the introductory process. Dr. Basdev Chakravarti, former professor of English and faculty dean of University of Kalyani, West Bengal, and visiting humanities professor, University of Central Arkansas at Conway, Arkansas, USA. He's a towering literary personality without frontiers. He is endowed with the traits such as simple living and high thinking, liberal attitude towards matters concerning life, academically attuned mindset, an open-hearted mentality in relation to social, economic, moral, religious, and political affairs of the nation, a freewheeling, no-holds-barred sort of personality, a person with lovely demeanors, academic credentials, lovely humane tone and tenor, a scholar par excellence, a world-renowned and acclaimed literary giant, the publisher of many books of formidable wavelength, editor of books of summum substance, a literary figure who is much sought after in the literary circles of India and abroad, and a man with a Midas touch in whatever endeavors he has undertaken in his life. Not in terms of making money, but in terms of making the best out of everything. We are very privileged to have your presence as a resource person in this webinar. I cordially invite you, sir, to enlighten all of us with your talk. And I need to tell you, he's a very good friend of mine, someone I can relate it to. We have a good chemistry between us. There is no doubt regarding that. Please, sir, dear Vasudevji, I always call them Vasudevji. Please take over. The floor is, the digital floor is all yours.
Good evening to everybody, to each and everybody present in this webinar. First of all, I convey my hearty thanks to the Reverend Principal of this Institute of Repute. I extend my thanks to Glitidas Alex and Oishwarya Biju, my friend Sijo Joseph Chennelil, Miss Richa Anna Abraham, and Miss Teresa Thomas. I also convey my regards to all the faculty members of the Department of English. This evening, what we intend to do, first of all, is a kind of discourse on Shakespearean criticism, but as this subject is a very vast, it's not possible for me to include from Plato till today. It is a very difficult job. So I have decided to confine myself only to first Plato, then I will switch over to Aristotle, then I will shift my attention from Aristotle to some of the major Shakespearean texts, textual criticism, introduced first in the last century by A.C. Bradley. And in this context, I will refer to Greek tragedy to show what actually tragedy means. The main purpose, I will also refer to Coleridge, who has made a very epoch-making and revolutionizing comment on Othello. Charles Lamb also was a critic of Shakespeare. He also made a comment on King Lear. And finally, I will arrive at certain conclusion on Shakespeare. This is the area of my speech today. Particularly, this is the area of my speech today. First of all, if we want to talk anything on Shakespeare, we need to refer to Plato. Plato was the most celebrated disciple of Socrates. Everybody knows it. By his time of glory of Athenian art and literature, illustrated in the works of artists like Phidias and Polygnotus, and writers like Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes, was on the way, and their place was taken by philosophy and oratory, of which the chief priest was Empedocles and Socrates. Among the philosophers, and Gorgias, Antiphon, and Lysias among orators. Among Plato's view on the value of literature to society and its nature and functions also came in for their due share of consideration. Plato's view of forms, the theory of forms expounded systematically in Phaedo and the Republic. I will refer to particularly Plato's Republic, Book 6 and Book 10. And his forms, Plato's theory of form, can be easily summarized as follows. The familiar world of object which surrounds us and which we apprehend in our sense, which we apprehend by our sense, is not independent and self-sufficient. Indeed, it is not the real world because it is dependent upon another world, the realm of pure forms or ideas which can be apprehended only by reason, not only by our bodily sense perception. What Plato means here is that the world we live in is not the real world. Our surroundings, our landscape, our seascape, hills, mountains, everything, living and non-living organisms, their actions, their reactions, all these are not real. The real life, the real thing lies somewhere else. That is invisible. That is, we cannot see. So, the life we have in this world is simply unreal, a falsification. The real life, to Plato, the meaning of real life is only a kind of concept. What is the connection between the two realms? This realm where we live in and the realm where the real, the actual, the fact is found. What is the different connection? Plato says that the qualities of any object in the physical world are derived from ideal forms of the qualities, from the ideal forms of those qualities. For example, an example in the physical world is beautiful because it partakes of the ideal form of beauty which exists in the higher realm. And so, with tallness, for example, tallness, equality, goodness, which Plato sees as the highest of the forms, Plato can characterize entire objects of having their essence in the ideal form. Hence, a bed in the physical world is an imperfect copy of the ideal bed in the world of form. In this connection, in this context, the connection between the two realms can best be illustrated using examples from geometry. Any triangle for a square that we construct using physical instruments is bound to be imperfect. If we try to draw any triangle, it may seem exact. It may look exact. Apparently, it may be exact, but it is not the real. At most, it can merely approximate the ideal triangle which is perfect. We cannot draw a triangle perfectly because it cannot be perfect, because it is an object. But the concept of the table or anything I draw, anything I paint, anything I write, that is the object. But the thing is not the object. The thing is the concept. And that concept lies somewhere else. That is, that maybe if you bring this concept into the domain of theology, you will find that it is the divinity. It is something divine. It is something celestial. Whatever you call it, in your name, that doesn't matter. But it is something invisible. But it is very powerful. And that powerful object's reflection is this world where we live in. So, a close scrutiny of the entire idea of Plato is based upon, I can use this word, let me use this word, a kind of subjectivism, or I can also use, you allow me to use the word subjective idealism, or popularly known as Platonism. What is Platonism? Platonism is this, a kind, I mean, I don't consider a watch, I don't consider this watch, a concept. It is tangible, it is concrete, it is form, but its real existence is a concept, and that concept is invisible. That concept is behind this present world. It is the world of essence, unity, and universality, which the physical world is characterized by perpetual change and decay, mere existence as opposed to essence. This physical world to which we belong is subject to change. Time ravages everything. So, it is not permanent and it is not real. So, life is a falsification. Life in this world is a kind of falsification of the lie which is behind, which is invisible, which we cannot see. That world which is invisible is simply a concept, an idea. But this world which looks concrete, tangible, is not real. It's a reflection of that real world. So it's a falsification of the reality. First falsification of the reality. Life, living, everything in this world is a reflection. Reflection, the word reflection hints at something not exact. It is being reflected. What does it mean? It means something real, something is reflected. It has been mirrored. It is not the real. If we see ourselves standing in front of a mirror and look at, and if we see our image on the mirror, that image on the mirror is not real. That is unreal. So this world is a mirror, and the life in this world is a reflection. Plato says in the Republic, ideas are concepts are ultimate reality. Things are conceived as ideas before they take practical shape as states. A tree, thus, is nothing more than a concrete embodiment of its image in idea. The idea of everything, therefore, is its original pattern, and the thing itself is a copy. As the copy never falls short of the original, it is once removed from reality. So, it merely copies a copy. So, everything in this world is a copy. And what is literature? Literature is also a copy of the life which is also a copy. Literature, ordinarily, very often we say literature is a reflection of life. So reflection of life, reflection of what? Reflection of the life in this world. So what is the life in this world? That is also a reflection. And what is the reflection of that? That is the concept. That is the idea. So Plato makes a double, considers that literature, poetry, drama, all these are the double falsification or doubly falsified. Life is falsified because life is a reflection of the reality, of the concept. And that life is reflected on literature. So again, a kind of falsification. So according to Plato, literature is doubly falsified, double falsification. So art is essentially deceptive, Plato says. Art is essentially deceptive and potentially dangerous because the whole aim of art is to deceive. Success is achieved when the spectator mistakes an imitation of reality. Art is unconcerned. Art is absolutely unconcerned with morality, sometimes even reaching the immoral lessons, as in the case of Homer's Iliad. Plato attacks poetry. Specifically, he attacks poetry and poets for the following reasons. Number one, I have jotted down the points. Poetry is twice removed from reality. It has been removed 2 times from the reality, and it makes men believe in the impossible because it is devoid of morality. And once morality is absent, it is impossible. Everything in this world, everything in life, if there is no morality, then everything is imperfect. The poet, second point, the poet writes a poem not because he thought for a long time, but because he is inspired suddenly. This suddenness cannot be true. This suddenness, anything sudden cannot be truthful. Poetry contains profound truth, but poetry falls in the test of reason. This is what Plato says. Poetry contains the reason. It cannot take the place of philosophy, and it cannot make better citizens. Next, he says, I tell all these things from book 6 of Republic. Poetry affects the emotion, not the reason. It affects the emotion, not the reason. Perhaps Plato has not considered the unification of sensibilities. There can be unified sensibility in the mind of a poet, but Plato perhaps, I just make a counter argument on this point. He unified the concept, the idea of unified sensibility didn't perhaps occur to the minds of Plato. Poetry appeals to the heart and not to the intellect. Emotions are temporal, flexible, fluid, elusive. They cannot be safeguards. They cannot lead man towards perfection. Poetry is non-moral in character. It treats both virtue and vice alike. It doesn't teach moral to the readers. It corrupts human beings. The function of poetry is not just to offer pleasure. It should reach some morals also. It should contribute to the knowledge. Because poetry doesn't impart any knowledge, because it pertains to emotion. It doesn't appeal to intellect. It doesn't appeal to readers' intellect. It appeals to emotion. It should contribute to the knowledge. A poet should also be a good teacher. Plato suggests truth is the test of poetry. A poet is a good artist only insofar as he is a good teacher. Plato's comments on drama, it is an important area of book 6. Drama, according to Plato, is a branch of poetry. It's a branch of poetry. Drama is different from poetry in the following ways. How? First of all, drama is to be staged. Its approval and disapproval depends. Its success or failure depends upon the audience. To conceive the audience, dramatists use some cheap techniques like quarrels, lamentations, under sounds of animals. These techniques are a shame in our normal life. Such plays should be censored. All these things we will find in Plato's book 6, Plato's Republic. That's a dialogue. That is not a systematic book, very much inorganic, non-episodic, very much inorganic, loose. It's a kind of dialogue on certain discourses. Moreover, there is a lack of coherence, and Plato is against pleasure, a tragedy and comedy. Perhaps it is my derivation. Perhaps austerity was one of the characteristic features of Plato, which has been revealed in the Republic. So, this is what Plato is. Then, let me come to Aristotle. Socrates was the teacher, and Plato was Socrates' student. Aristotle was a student of Plato. After all, Plato was Aristotle's teacher. Naturally, Aristotle made certain compromise and tried to avoid tactfully what Plato believes. In chapter 6 of Poetics, Aristotle embarks upon the important subject of his book, Tragic Drama. He gives a comprehensive definition of tragedy at the very beginning, because Plato was against the tragedy and comedy. Because these types of dramas, which are double falsification, cannot impart anything, any moral good to man. And he gives a comprehensive definition of tragedy at the very beginning of the Poetics. Tragedy is a representation of an action that is what serious attention, complete in itself, and some amplitude in language, enriched by a variety of artistic devices appropriate to the several parts of the play, presented in the form of action, not narration, by means of pity and fear, bringing about the purgation of such. So this is what Aristotle believes. So Aristotle's definition of tragedy, the imitation of an action. The action is serious. It is complex and it is of certain magnitude in a language beautified in different parts with different kinds of embellishment through actions and not narration. I mean, I'm talking about the drama. There is hardly any narration in drama. And soliloquies soliloquies are not the narration in a truest sense of the term. Though sense of pity and fear bringing about catharsis in this emotion. Second, the imitation of an action that is serious and complete and of a certain magnitude. This means that a good tragedy deals with one issue that is very serious, and we cannot have a tragedy about something trivial like the breaking of a fingernail. Magnitude here means size. The tragic plot must have a certain magnitude or length. It should be enough to allow the change from happiness to misery, but not too long to be forgotten before the end. So, in Aristotle's poetics, Aristotle raises certain issues. What are they? What are those issues? The issues are, he doesn't properly negate Plato's views on literature. But Aristotle in poetics says that literature, poetry, tragedy, satisfies man, It has certain aesthetic values in the life of a man. So, what Plato says is in the context of the society. Is poetry, is literature, is drama good for the society or not? That is the basic primary intention of what Plato has written. He thinks of the society is good. Will tragedy, will literature lead a society to the zenith point of moral perfection? Plato says no, because it is a double falsification. Literature is doubly falsified, and it cannot be real. It cannot be true. So, literature is injurious to the health of the society. But Aristotle says, yes, it's all right, but literature has certain aesthetic values with which man can lead his life decently. This is what Aristotle believes. And I can remember just now one line I may misquote. There may be a missing of one or two words. The line is, it is written by one of Shakespearean critic, Abercrombie. I read Abercrombie during my college days. Tragedy satisfies us even in the moment of our distress. Why do we enjoy a theatre? Why do we go to a theatre hall? To witness the play on the stage. We go to the theatre hall and pay the money simply just to weep, just to cry. No, not at all. We go there for the purpose of getting ourselves satisfied aesthetically and psychologically. Tragedy satisfies us even in the moment of our distress. So Aristotle in Poetics uses four important words: pity, terror, catharsis, and amartia. These are he has talked about unity of time, unity of place, unity of actions, all these things in his writings, but in poetics. But mainly pity and terror. First of all, if we look at a tragedy, one of the great tragedies of Shakespeare. Now, let us see how Shakespeare's and his contemporaries, Shakespeare's contemporaries and other subsequent critical writers made an assessment of Shakespeare's tragedies, following the principles of poetics, formulated by Aristotle. First of all, if you look at any one of Shakespeare's great tragedies, we will find that at the time of witnessing the play on the stage, we feel a sense of pity. Pity for whom? For the tragic hero or the tragic heroine. We see all the characters are great. They are great not only in their body, but also in their mind. They are full of grandeur, not only in their body, but also in their mind. And we see how he suffers. He suffers a lot. And sometimes we find there is a kind of force which Aristotle calls prime mover that controls everything in our life. It is the faith that determines the life of an individual. So if you look at the Greek tragedy, you will find it is the faith that determines the life of an individual. The character has no flaws at all. For example, King Oedipus, the king Oedipus. The king was threatened by one prophecy that he would be killed by his son. Then the king left the baby, his son, in the forest. Somehow or other, he was brought up by a person who lived in the forest. And ultimately, the boy grew up. He became a very serious fighter because constantly he had to fight against the adversities of forest life. One day the king came to the forest. There was a fierce battle, fierce fight between the king and the boy. The boy didn't know the identity of the king. The boy didn't know the identity of the king's wife. I mean, he knows that he is the king's wife, but he didn't know that his relationship with the king. And in that fierce fight, the king was killed. And when the king was killed, it was according to the custom of Greek society, the then Greek society, according to Greek mythology. The defeated, the one who kills the king should marry his wife and become the king of them. Now, according to the customs, he married the king's wife. But this lady, woman, was his mother. So it's a kind of incest. He married his own mother, of course, without knowing, without any knowledge about her. But it's an incest. It disturbed the cosmos. Naturally, for the king's sin, the citizens of the country started suffering. Theseus came and said, it is the king's fault which led the people of this land suffer. But what was the fault in the character of the young boy? But here one thing which is very important, that is according to Greek mythology, ignorance on the part of a king is a sin. Ignorance on the part of a king is a sin. The young Oedipus was ignorant of the identity of his own parents. So he committed a sin. From that point of view, if we think of Greek tragedies, we can arrive at a particular idea that Greek tragedies is dependent upon fate. It is the fate which predominates in the life of human being. The prime mover decides everything of human life. But in Shakespearean tragedy, what we find is the character, tragic heroes or the heroines are noble. They are grand. They are very much successful. There is no doubt about it. And whatever they do is very serious. But at the same time, they have certain flaws in their character. Here lies the difference between Greek tragedy and Shakespearean tragedy. Generally, it is called, in the context of Shakespearean tragedies, character is destiny. And very often we attach we connect this cliche sentence with A.C. Bradley. But character is destiny is a quote which is also attributed to the Greek philosopher Heraclitus. We often go on referring to Bradley's often quoted line, character is destiny. This quote implies that destiny or fate is not a predetermined outside. That means lapses of the character work. Othello's faults works through his character. Hamlet's fault works through his character. Lear's fault works through his character. Macbeth's fault, F-A-U-L-T, fault, works through his character. So, in Shakespeare's tragedy, character, every character, tragic protagonist, has certain lapses. But at the same time, there are also presence of some indomitable, powerful fate, or role of powerful fate, or in Aristotelian phrase, the prime mover that determines everything. Heraclitus was a Greek philosopher who was very active around 500 BC and is known as the last of the Ionian philosophers. Very little is known about his life and family beyond even his birthday. A.C. Bradley, writing in the early 1900s, is one of the most intelligent and respected critics of Shakespeare. Harold Bloom groups him in the same category as Samuel Johnson. Bradley says that because of this ineluctable force of fate, all this makes us feel the blindness and helplessness of man. So that is called tragic flaws. That lapses, that tragic flaws, faith works through the tragic flaws. Let me give an example from Othello. Cassius is coming out from the tent of Desdemona. From the distance, Othello and Iago saw Cassius coming out from the tent of Desdemona. Then Iago made a very subtle insinuation. He just makes one sentence of insinuation. What is that? Iago says, very slowly and almost silently, I like not that. I like not that. So this subtle insinuation, for the first time in the mind of Othello, start reckoning his conjugal bliss. So it is the suspicion It is the jealousy that invites tragedy. I mean, the seed of jealousy has been harvested first by Iago when he soliloquizes in presence of Othello. I like what happens. This is a very, very important soliloquy in Shakespeare's. So, there is a tragic flaw. For example, King Lear. What is the flaw in his character? He wanted to be the king without any responsibility. He wanted his kingdom should be divided among his daughters, Goneril, Regal, and Cordelia. He wanted to divide his kingdom among his daughters, but he is reluctant. At the same time, he wanted to be the king. He won't take the responsibility of running the administration. At the same time, he wants to be king and he wants to distribute his kingdom among his daughters. And he has made a love vanity test, love vanity among his daughters. It was the vanity in his mind that prompted, that led him to suffer immensely. Though Cordelia died, but the cause for which Cordelia fought have been vindicated and became the king finally. So that is a different issue. That is called poetic justice. So tragic flaws is there, and we feel pity for those great characters. At the same time, we feel pity, we feel horror or terror for those in our mind when we witness the Othello on the stage. Simply because we can think, we can apprehend the same fate may befall us. So this is a kind of apprehension, and out of this apprehension we may very often think that the same cruel fate may befall in our personal life. And seeing all these serious events on the stage, the fall of a great man, the fall of a man of stature for his certain lapses, at the same time, some role of some inscrutable forces of nature or fate, whatever we call it, whenever we see all these things, we feel a sense of pity and terror. And it results in a kind of purgation, which Aristotle calls it catharsis. The word catharsis only occurs only one time in poetry. Only one time, this word, catharsis. And this catharsis is very important. There is a kind of medical metaphor. It's a kind of purgation, a kind of release of our suppressed emotion. And what's the result of this repression? There is a kind of suffocation. And after witnessing a tragedy written by Shakespeare, our mind, those till the wounded emotions are passed out. So this is catharsis. See, I'm sorry, it has fallen. I have to work in my laptop. I have to work on the laptop. Okay. So, Shakespeare was an Elizabethan. In the subsequent period, 17th century, Dryden also wrote tragedies, the name of which is All for Love. 18th century, I don't think that there are any plays, except sentimental, anti-sentimental plays by Goldsmith and Sheridan. School for Scandals or, anti-sentimental comedies. There was no play written in the Romantic period except one written by Shelley, the name of which is Sinisi. In Victorian England, there was no plays. Tennyson wrote perhaps one play. But Victorian period is important from the point of view of novel, because its earlier century was presided over by novelists like Fielding, Tobias Smollett, and Stark. In Victorian period, there was hardly any plays. There were novels. In novels, particularly in the novels of Thomas Hardy, you will find the cruel role of some unknown powers leading the central characters in the novel. In novel, we never say tragedy or fate. We say irony of fate. Tragedy is, this particular word is applicable only to plays, not to novels. In novels, it is irony of fate, which Hardy calls immanent to, whatever, immanent to. And 20th century, there were tragedies. There are tragedies. For example, I can refer to instantly Synge's Riders to the Sea. There, the important character is Moria. Moria has no lapses in that character. Michael and Bartley, all her sons, died in the sea. They had no other alternative for their sustenance. For their livelihood, they had to go to the sea. And all of them lost their lives. And Moria at the end of the concludes, no man can be living forever. No man can be living forever. So, Riders to the Sea is a place where we don't find any lapses in the central character, Moria. And Lady Gregory also wrote a couple of plays, but I'm not referring to those plays. The most important play written in the 20th century is social drama, social tragedy. For example, let me refer to Galsworthy, John Galsworthy's Justice. Look at the character of Falder in Justice. He is an ordinary clerk of a farm. He is unlike Othello. He is not like Othello, nor he is not the Prince of Denmark. He is not the King of Scotland. He is not Macbeth. Or he is not even King Lear. He was simply a clown. He is an ordinary man. But in Shakespeare's tragedy, the characters are of big size. They are magnanimous. The magnitude of characters in Shakespeare's protagonists, heroes, tragic heroes, make us spellbound. So, the concept of tragedy underwent siege. And I forgot to tell you one thing, that is two things. Coleridge on one occasion said about the character of Iago. Iago is a motiveless malignity. I derive from this phrase, motiveless malignity, a kind of decision that Shakespeare's Othello is a racial trait. There was a motive even in Iago. Coleridge says he is a motiveless malignity. Because Othello was a move. By dint of his caliber, by dint of his talent, he rose to the zenith point of Venetian art. But he married a white girl. And for that reason, Roderigo, Desdemona's father, and Iago were destroyed. So, from that motiveless malignity, I tried, I may be wrong, I tried to arrive at the conclusion that Shakespeare's Othello is a racial tragedy. This point I forgot to tell. Another landmark statement made by Charles Lamb about Lear, King Lear, requires or deserves mention in this occasion. Lamb says Shakespeare's Lear, King Lear, lacks the stage ability because of poetry. King Lear is a poetry. It is not a play. It is a kind of poetry that inspires humanity inspires humanity and inspires man to think that the disturbance in the cosmos not only to the individual, not only to an individual, but also to the society. This is Lamb's comment on Lear. So over time, many Shakespearean critics, Dryden also said one thing. So Dr. Johnson made comments on Shakespeare's critics. That way, within this short span of time, it's not possible to say all these things. So I conclude now. And finally, I thank you all for giving me this opportunity to exchange my views with all the students, faculty members, and perhaps my friend Dr. Shubha Narayan is present. I also thank her very much to participate in this webinar. Thank you. If you have any question, please do ask.
That was a wonderful session, sir. Thank you so much. Now we are moving on to the Q&A session. All the doubts and questions can be raised in the chat box. Sir, I will read out the questions and you can answer them.
It's the time for you to post the questions. If you have any questions, then you can put forward the question right now.
Any question? Any question?
If you want to seek any clarification or amplifications regarding anything that has transpired, especially in the lecture series, you may post your questions right now.
Okay. Thank you, Joseph, for
Sir,
the
just
thing
wait,
you have organized.
just wait for a moment, sir. Teresa, take up, then you just conclude the section.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yes.
Due to time constraints, we are winding up the session. So now I request Ms. Richa Anna Abraham of third year BA English to propose the word of thanks. Over to you, Richa.
It is indeed a proud privilege to acknowledge the souls responsible for the success of today's webinar. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank the principal of KCMT, Reverend Father Joshi Chiramkuri CMI, an esteemed individual of lovely manners and optimistic way of life. On behalf of the Department of English, I thank him from the bottom of my heart. Dr. Basudev Chakraborty, the Honorable Speaker of the Day, has taken us to a world of various intricate aspects of the topic Shakespearean criticism. Through his spontaneous articulation, lively presentation, and in-depth approach, he has made this webinar so worthwhile and interesting. Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful presentation. Mr. Sijo Joseph Chenelil, the dynamic HOD of the English department, is our pillar and pride. The English department has reached enviable heights under his inspiring leadership. I express my sincere gratitude to you, sir, for being here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I also thank the brains and hands behind this webinar, Mrs. Sheena Susan Devi and Mr. Neville Thomas. Organizing this program in such a splendid and stellar manner deserves an applause. Last but not the least, I express my heartfelt gratitude to the students of the English Department of KCMT for their wholehearted support. I also thank all the participants for your valuable presence during these uncertain times. Thanking all of you once again, let me conclude.
Thank you, Richa. With this, we have come to the end of our webinar. Once again, reminding all of you that the link for the feedback form is given in the chat box. Kindly fill up the form and submit it. Thanking all of you once again. Good night.